Fear kills more dreams than failure ever will. Jay Sammet, future-proofing you.
What is the language of leadership? It is the skills, traits, lessons learned, communications, and inspirations of leaders. The Language of Leadership podcast will help you develop the successful tools renowned leaders have discovered and have used effectively, sharing with you how to be the leader you desire to be and the leader your team will desire to follow. Now, here is your host, Chuck Marting.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Language of Leadership. I'm your host, Chuck Marting. This week we're going to discuss a topic that I've had several conversations with people that's a very real concern and an experience that almost every leader at some point has had to face. So what is it that I'm going to speak about this week? Fear, and how that fear paralyzes us and destroys us. Have you ever noticed how children are fearless? They only learn what fear is when their parents teach them, or through their reaction to whatever it is that they're doing scares the parent, and they react, causing the child to become alarmed. Or at that moment, they're learning what fear is. Children also learn fear from outside influences such as school, church, or sometimes other family members. My oldest son was a perfect example of this when I was a new father and when he was young. He was not afraid to try or do anything. He is the cause of many of the first gray hairs my wife and I have. He became infatuated with Disney cartoons like Toy Stories and others that would occupy his watching for hours. And we as parents would have an opportunity to check off tasks that we had on our to-do list while he was watching Disney. Well, one day my wife had started a Disney cartoon and our son sat down and began watching the cartoon. And while he was watching that cartoon, she took the opportunity to get some things done, but she was able to stick her head out and see that he was still in front of the TV and everything was okay and she could hear everything going on. And so she kept looking out and checking on him. But when she came out of the room, it was silent. She could just hear the TV and she saw that he was no longer watching the cartoon. And then at that same time, she heard, "Mommy, I'm stuck." She ran out to the living room and she came out to find our son's feet and his legs dangling out the window of our third floor story apartment. He had pushed the screen out of the window and he was trying to look at a dog on the ground floor. Needless to say, Disney and our time thinking that we had the opportunity to get some tasks done was over. He wasn't scared until after he saw his mother's reaction of fear and what could have happened. You know, most leaders have big dreams. We think about everything. We've all had to learn and experience and achieve success, and we have to make those dreams a reality. And sometimes our fear of what could happen can cause overwhelm and self-doubt, and it seems to just creep into our mind. One of the biggest fears that I've come across with working with leaders has been they're worrying about achieving success, that they think that by achieving that as success, it could turn into a different scenario and cause them to become a different person or even cause greater negative consequences to their relationships, or they could have serious repercussions like social and economic backlash. You know, sometimes it's even the beliefs that we have grown up with, where if you're now in a position where you're making really good money as a leader, a lot of times there's association with guilt, where we have been taught growing up that having too much money was a bad thing, or that people with a lot of money are not good people. So that fear becomes very real and it interferes with our thoughts of the situation, and it can even sabotage our success as a leader because of our past experience of these imposed beliefs. At times, fear becomes so real for leaders that some have resorted to self-sabotage with the idea, if I show that I'm weak or that I failed at this task, perhaps they'll give it to someone else so I won't have to admit my fear in accomplishing this task. You see, if you expect yourself to fail or to have experiences with negative outcomes, guess what? You will fail. Using avoidance strategies to protect yourself from emotions or anxiety can cause discomfort in the short term, but in the long term will cause you to experience more of the feelings that you were hoping to avoid. You see, it multiplies and makes the issue or problem greater than it once was. You may think you're sparing yourself from a challenge of taking action, but what you're really doing is keeping yourself stuck right where you are. In Jay Samet's book, Future Proofing You, the 12 Truths for Creating Opportunity, Maximizing Wealth, and Controlling Your Destiny in an Uncertain World, he shares a story about fear that I'd like to share with you now. In the Middle Ages, a notorious thief was taken before the king of Lyoness to pay for his crimes. The king had the convict taken into the castle's musty cellar, where he offered the man a choice of two punishments. He could be swiftly hung from the gallows, or face what was behind a large, foreboding, rusty iron door. Without hesitation, the thief chose the rope. As the hangman placed the noose around his neck, the thief inquired, "My king, I beseech you, what's behind that door?" "I offer all the same choice," the king exclaimed with a laugh, "yet everyone chooses the rope." With the thief's last breath, and as the hangman tightened the knot around his neck, the thief pleaded again, "Obviously, my king, I won't tell anyone. What's behind the door?" "Freedom," sighed the king, adding, "but it seems most people are more afraid of the unknown than death." How does fear show up? It shows up in many different areas of our life. First, self-sabotage. This is where you create challenges for yourself, and you make it harder to achieve your future success sometimes. And this is realized through people forgetting to meet deadlines, they make poor financial choices, or they may start projects but never finish them. These acts of self-sabotage will ultimately cost you and prevent you from moving forward. Negative beliefs. These are automatic thoughts that we all have, such as, "I'm weak," "I'm a failure," "I'm an idiot," "I'm inadequate." Leaders turn towards negative beliefs as a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're constantly looking for evidence that will prove them correct. If you expect to fail or experience negative outcomes, guess what? You will, and it will find you. Avoidance. These strategies protect you from emotions such as anxiety, discomfort, and in the short term, it may work, but in the long term, in the long run, they will cause you to experience more of the feelings you were hoping to avoid. The reason for that is they reinforce your fear around whatever you're trying to avoid. So the next time you're in the same situation, you'll feel even more uncomfortable and may even go further to sabotage your future and success. Procrastination. Sometimes when the leader is trying to achieve success, procrastination can occur. While this procrastination will help delay your accomplishments or the completion of your tasks long enough for the opportunities to pass you by, or you start projects but never finish them, this is a protection mechanism where you're trying to spare yourself from the challenge at hand or from taking action when you're really just keeping yourself stuck right where you're at. Perfectionism. By setting unrealistic high bars for ourselves that we know we're not going to ever meet is a real fear for success. Low self-esteem can cause a leader to seek external validation and in seeking other people's approval instead of relying on our own internal voice for our guidance. So we keep on guard towards others and in life. Have you ever experienced or have you witnessed individuals at the first sign of a setback that they encounter that they quit, they no longer put in the effort, or they just withdraw and they stop even trying? Leaders usually experience this or contribute to this because of the lack of self-belief. Leaders don't feel that they have what it takes to get the results they're wanting to achieve. I experienced this early on in my career as a law enforcement officer. I had a very difficult trainer, one who didn't have my best interests at heart and really could care less if I would have stayed to be an officer or if I had left to go to a different agency. See, this trainer constantly looked for anything to call me out on. And because of that, I started second guessing everything that I was doing. I was slowly beginning to lose my self-confidence and my belief in myself. It wasn't until I was reassigned to a new training officer did I even realize that I was self-sabotaging myself. The leadership matters. Mentorships make for success. It was because of my next trainer that I was able to realize exactly what I was doing and was able to correct it with this officer's help and their encouragement, guidance, and direction. You see, I made a decision to arrest somebody for a crime that was committed, but then second-guessed myself and chose not to arrest the person and to just write a report as to document what was going on in this situation. This training officer pulled me to the side, literally looked me dead in the face and said to me, "Why the hell are you sabotaging yourself?" So in the back of my mind, this was the other shoe dropping. And my first thoughts were, great, just what I need. But instead, this training officer looked at me and said, "You made the right decision." Then you stop and second guess yourself and make a decision, even if it is the wrong decision, and you make it. Now understand that besides, if it is the wrong decision, I'm going to stop you. But seeing what I see in you, I won't have to step in. Needless to say, it was at that moment that I had the clarity that I needed. With this officer's assurance that she would not let me do anything that would jeopardize myself or the integrity of an investigation that I was conducting, I heard exactly what I needed to hear that night. I went back to doing exactly what I knew I had to do, not giving it a second thought, not listening to the internal voices in my head that were causing me to second guess myself. Because of this, I learned a valuable lesson that I continue to remember each and every day, and something that I pass on to others like those of you who are listening to this podcast to help you in your pursuits and your challenges. Self-destruction. This usually manifests itself in both drug or alcohol abuse, and it can even be someone who indulges or binge eats or other risky behaviors, and this is in an effort to protect themselves. There are 7 strategies that you can utilize as a leader to help you in overcoming fear. And no, I'm not going to promise you that you won't experience fear again. It's just part of what we as humans will experience on a daily basis. But these techniques that we're going to talk about, they will help you overcome fear faster and at least have strategies to help you overcome that fear. First, become more aware of your thoughts. Your thoughts as a leader will produce emotions within you. You have to change how you feel. You have to change your thoughts whenever you feel fear. You have to stop and look back at your steps that you were taking and identify what it is you were thinking. What thoughts made you feel this fear? When you can identify them, it will be that much easier for you to resolve them. Number 2, choose to have positive thoughts. Simply not thinking about a negative thought is not going to get rid of it. There's a law called the law of replacement. And this law dictates that you can't replace something with nothing. You have to replace it with something. So you have to recognize and identify this. You're experiencing this negative fear producing thought, and then you as a leader have to replace it with a positive thought instead. So an example of this is, suppose you want your team to have positive working relationships with one another. You would need to identify the thoughts such as, why is my team whining, complaining, bickering with one another? Now, to change this, visualize what would happen if there was harmony and good working relationships with your team. How would that look? By doing this, it gives you the mental forethought of the success your team will have with you leading them to achieve this. And now you can address this with your team with an action plan to correct this behavior. Number 3, identify the physical effects of fearful thoughts. What sensations do you experience when you think of fearful thoughts? Some people have stomach aches, some get headaches, others may even feel that they're experiencing a heart attack. Now, identify how you would feel if you replace these sensations with the ones that you'd rather experience, such as joy, excitement, or even happiness. See, we need to focus on positive emotions. These types of sensations will replace the fears that you identified. Now you can move forward and stop the physical effects of those fearful thoughts. Number 4, use positive affirmations. The use of positive affirmations creates positive suggestions. The success-oriented mindset, along with affirmations you create, are very powerful, and their statements describe the reality that you want to create. This is powerful when combating fear. So how would an affirmation work for you as a leader? Well, first, you have to imagine what it would look like. To create or to form a positive statement, you would need to describe something that you have already achieved to relate to it. So an example of this is a statement that I've heard Bob Proctor and Jack Canfield state on many occasions, and that is starting off a sentence that would say, I am so happy and grateful now that I am blank, blank, blank. Keeping a positive mental attitude by creating and reciting a positive affirmation will help keep you motivated and focused. The last thing that you'll think about is fear if you do this. Now, number 5, now we're going to change your visualizations with positive, powerful emotions. For example, I am so happy and grateful now that I am a successful leader of my team. When you include a positive emotion in a statement like happiness or gratitude, you're going to open yourself up to experiencing that emotion in your body. This gives you affirmation, a lot more impact. Number 6, you need to be realistic about risk. A lot of times in leadership, we have to risk some things personally just to make sure that we're able to bear the loss of that risk, especially if you don't succeed the first time. If you as a leader know that you're going to be putting in a lot of long hours and time, and yet your family is very important to you, you have to plan time to spend with your family and understand what steps you're going to take to make that happen, and then follow through with it and do it. You have to set your priority. Number 7, you have to celebrate your successes. Here are some suggestions in how to do that. First, recognize what you've done. With a daily accomplishment list, you write down each time you've completed a task or an activity, especially if they're habits you want to form or maintain, or tasks and milestones for a larger project. Write them on a piece of paper. At the end of the day, you'll have a daily accomplishment list, and this will be your cause for celebration. Then you need to determine how you're going to celebrate. It's important that this is not a to-do list. It doesn't replace a to-do list. This list helps you to recognize what you've done during the day, and it gives you a written record of it, and it's time to make it so that you're able to reflect throughout your day. Now, if you don't want to write down all the good things that you've managed to do during the day, try using your bathroom breaks or your lunch breaks for time for reflection as well. Saying something simple as, I've achieved more than I had an hour ago. I'm heading in the right direction. I feel proud and excited. Pride has a bad reputation as one of the 7 deadly sins, but it's also one of the 10 positive emotions that we can experience. It's really important to allow yourself to feel proud of yourself when you've accomplished a specific task. It's crucial to keep the momentum going by reminding yourself of the positive outcomes that you're working towards, and that you're using this to fuel your excitement. You should share your positive emotions. Forget what you were told as a kid about not bragging or telling your friends or your family what you've accomplished. A lot of times, doing this even on social media is an easy and quick outlet to be able to put out to the world what you're accomplishing. It's important that you let others know that you have a plan. In doing this, tell family members or friends that you're sharing goals and achievements, and that by announcing this to them or on social media, you're sharing and celebrating these accomplishments to keep your positive momentum going in reaching your ultimate goal that you have set for yourself. Now, if you do this and you explain this to your friends or your family, you're more likely to recite what it is that you have done. It's like having an accountability partner. When you share this, you can also share when you're struggling or you need some encouragement or you're needing some help. This is an effective tool for your development in overcoming fear. Remember to celebrate even the little accomplishments. Not every action warrants a full-blown party, but some wins deserve a moment of self-congratulations and recognition as well. In closing, I want to talk about one last thing that has really helped me in my development in overcoming fear and accomplishing the things that I am wanting to accomplish in my life and in my role as a leader. You see, Ed Milet explained a theory that he has, or it's maybe even more of a belief that he shares. And I've kind of adopted it myself in my life and what I do, and that is blissful dissatisfaction. You see, a lot of times when people are asked, how are you doing? Or they try to see what it is that you're doing, there's a lot of different ways that people respond to that. Some people say, I'm doing well. Sometimes they say, I'm doing okay. One that I hear is better than I deserve. And the list goes on. But what I really liked about his way of answering that question was he said that he is blissfully dissatisfied. You see, he's acknowledging by that statement, saying that he's happy, but he wants more. And that really struck me. And it made a lot of sense and a big impact on me because I am happy with the accomplishments that I'm doing. When I do the tasks like I explained to you earlier and I write them down and I'm able to go back and reflect, it does make me happy. And I do want to celebrate those things because these are accomplishments that I've made and I'm happy. But every day by doing this, I'm wanting more. It's not that I'm not happy that I've accomplished all these things or that I'm moving in a positive direction, but it's also giving me the fuel to know that I'm still a little ways away from what it is that I'm wanting to accomplish. And so I'm going to keep moving towards that goal of achieving those things that I have set for myself to achieve. And so I'm acknowledging that in a positive way by sharing with people when they come to me and they ask how you're doing. I can tell them I'm blissfully dissatisfied. And you know what? That also gives you the opportunity to explain to somebody what that means to you and what you mean by sharing that with them. You may in turn change somebody else's thoughts and what they're doing currently in their own life and what they're accomplishing. So it's an opportunity to take a leadership role in sharing with other people one little thing that can change everything. And by doing so and sharing it with somebody else, it may give them the fuel that they need to start doing the things that we've talked about in this episode to overcoming fear and self-sabotage and to get rid of that paralysis of even trying to do something because of the nature of it. It just terrifies you, or there are things that come up that feed into that fear. It's all in overcoming this. And that's what I really like about that statement. And it keeps me on top of my task and what it is that I'm doing. And it's a reminder to me that I still have more to achieve. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this episode of The Language of Leadership. If you could do us a favor and share the show with your friends and your family or anybody else that is in a leadership role and you feel that it's going to help them, we would appreciate it. We've been getting some positive reviews, and we thank you for that. It helps with the ranking of the podcast and getting it out there to people. And that's the bottom line for this podcast, is to be able to help you as leaders to become the leaders you want to be, and to have a team that's going to want to follow you because of the example that you're setting, and helping them also to achieve the things that they're wanting to achieve in their life. Again, thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to bringing you another episode next week of The Language of Leadership. Take care. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Language of Leadership. This podcast is dedicated to help you navigate your leadership journey. You will learn the language and skills you need to be the leader you want to be. Remember, the language of leadership is an art. It is why your team wants to follow you. Take care.